Hello everyone, welcome to Celestial Bodies, a place to wonder in awe about the planets above. This report is coming to you a little late. It's the October holidays here in Glasgow, and I was basically pumpkin picking when I should have been doing this report. But I still wanted to bring it to you because the energy of this full moon that we've just experienced yesterday is still present, and it will be for the next couple of weeks anyway. So I think everything that I'm going to say is still sort of relevant for the ongoing weeks. So this full moon this full moon report, when I was writing this, it was really inspired by listening to a podcast called The Emerald. And what I'll do is I'll link it below for you to listen to if you want it. I highly recommend it. It was so good. And really what I thought that the creator of that podcast did was weave together so many things that I had been feeling in my heart in such a poetic way, and it really felt like it woke me up. Which felt very much like what I feel this Aries new moon has been about. It's felt like a sort of quite even perhaps like sort of boisterous wake up. While listening to it, it had me wanting to sort of dance myself into a trance, to chant and connect with something like raw and real, to worship, to sit around a fire, to be elemental, to sweat, to run, not for any goal, not to get fit, not to tick it off the list, not to feel spiritual, but just because it's what it is to be part of an animate world. So when I was thinking about the astrology of this full moon in Aries that we just experienced yesterday, it felt like that. Aries is the sort of the dancer of the zodiac, the spark of life, the initiate. It's a burst of energy, a birth. It's raw, unfiltered, dynamic. It's the baby of the zodiac, and it feels so alive. And this energy, coupled with the fact the ruler of Aries, Mars, the planet Mars, is in the sign of Cancer at the moment, and it's squaring this full moon. So it means that its ruler is really kind of active in a square. A square dynamic is always one that actually makes things happen. And also Mars is coming up to an opposition with the planet Pluto, which will be there for a little bit of time. So it's creating quite a dramatic shift in energy, I felt. So elementally, what we're dealing with those two, with the Cancer and the Aries, is fire and water. Now, those are elements that they square each other like when we're talking sort of astrology terms, but when we're just thinking about the elements, they can create different things. So obviously water can put out fire and dampen fire, but also water can there can be those cleansing effects of like a natural hot spring. The steam gushing as water splashes on hot coals is quite energetic. And then it also made me think of like boiling water and heat coming together to sort of soften the vegetables of a soup. So this full moon is really charged with this sort of Mars. There's Mars there. This Mars energy, because Mars rules Aries. These areas of the chart that are Cancer and Mars in Cancer, and the moon, when it was the full moon, which was yesterday, was in Aries. And so this is almost, feels to me like, and they were obviously square each other, that can feel like tension, but it's also like opportunity for growth, it says there. Squares are the nature of something happening, friction that makes things happen. And so the energy of all of this full moon being in Aries ruled by Mars feels like the beginning of what is a kind of longer Mars story in the chart. And the longer Mars story in the chart is that Mars this year has a retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which means it's going to spend a lot more time in that one sign than it normally would. And so Mars energy, this kind of assertive, aggressive, passionate, strength type energy, is in the same area of the chart for a while. So what I will do in an episode down the line, when Mars does go retrograde, is I'll go through all the house placements and where it might show up in your life. But I just want to introduce the concept of this being here for a long period of time today. So Mars is in this kind of, in Cancer, in this familial place. It's the place of the tribe or the nurturer, the home. And so with Mars spending a long time here, there may be these themes in your life, themes of like the home, the nurturance, the protectiveness, the more moon-ruled things. The Cancer rules the moon. The more moon-ruled things of emotions and moods and our personal needs, they're all going to go through this more, like it's going to have Mars there for a long period of time. The dates themselves are, so Mars goes retrograde on the 6th of December to February the 23rd. The shadow period, the shadow period is called that. It's basically the degrees in which Mars will go back and forth over begins on the 28th of October. And the post-retrograde shadow will last to the 7th of April. And most of the time Mars will be in Cancer, although there'll be a little spell also in Leo. But most of the time it's going to be in Cancer. So these dates, they kind of mark this like almost a longer emotional journey, and I think it starts almost now with this full moon in Aries, and it could feel a little bit like water being boiled up, heating up emotional themes that Mars will continue to work through during this retrograde. And it will, on a general level, draw us into Cancer themes of home, family, security. These issues that will be revisited and softened, like those vegetables in the boiling water over the coming months. And Mars is our energy and passion and drive. So when that planet of like the energy to get up and go goes retrograde, I mean, what could that mean? I actually am a person that has Mars retrograde in my own chart. And so it's interesting to reflect on that, and you may have that as well. But this Mars going in may mean, for this period of time for all of us, less about outward goals and possibly more about the drive towards inner reflection. And the energy shift direction may be becoming sort of more private, more internal perhaps. So this winter period might feel more like an inner launch. Obviously winter, even as we move into autumn more and more, is more like a time of hibernation where big change is occurring sort of under the surface. It's like everything's going to seed, everything's going underground. It doesn't mean that nothing's happening. There's actually still a lot of regeneration, regrouping, re-energization happening before it all launches again in the spring. And it feels like this Mars retrograde is almost in keeping with that this year. That's where our energy might be feeling even more and more this year than other years, towards an internal kind of hero's journey that then will launch again in the sort of like more the springtime, the May of next year. And so I just had this image there of, like, you know, the Rocky film, the one where he goes to Russia and he's like training sort of pretty much alone in this kind of like wilderness space, and it's snowing. If you don't know that scene, you can probably Google it and find it. But basically, as I remember it, there's a lot of training going on, but he's quite alone. So there's a lot of sweating and there's a lot of Mars energy, but it's sort of behind closed doors. It's in the wilderness. It's in a very sort of isolated space. and it's so I really feel that image for this Mars retrograde. Perhaps it's not that there won't be energy, it's just where the energy is directed won't be so outward. It may be more, and obviously when I do the report where I, from your rising sign, tell you what area of the chart it might be more directed into, that might bring another level of insight. But it's going to be that the Mars can sometimes be kind of reflected as a sort of hero's journey, of sort of leaving something known, coming up against obstacles and then coming back home in a sense. And so it feels like this Mars journey, as it goes retrograde this year in Cancer, has the Cancer themes that I've already mentioned, but also the energy is directed perhaps inwards. It's what you're doing behind the scenes that will then eventually, it's the sweat while no one is looking, that will eventually achieve your desires and whatever you might sort of be feeling more like launching come next May. And so that's this week. There are other things happening in the sky. One of the nice things that's actually happening is, where's the cards, other ones, is that the planet Venus has actually moved into the sign of Sagittarius. And this is quite nice for Venus because Venus has been in Scorpio. It's been going on that big sort of detective sort of hunt in Scorpio and revealing a lot of hidden things, which can actually, it is necessary and needed to be done, but it can feel quite unsettling in all its kind of revelations. And so Venus now travels into the sign of Sagittarius. So I think it will feel for Venus, for all things sort of like love and connection and pleasure and joy and inspiration, it might feel a little more hopeful in Sagittarius. It might feel like a sort of a more, almost like, I wanted to say breath of fresh air, but it's not. It's more like the fire has returned. That it's more like putting a fire on in the house. Sagittarius is like, like the fire in the house that warms everything up. It's going to feel more warming. Venus being in Sagittarius, Venus moving there. So that's another sort of planetary movement this week that's been quite nice. But the main event was yesterday's full moon in Aries. It may have felt like a jolt of energy, actually, tempered by this kind of more friction-like quality in perhaps the familiar, the sort of Cancer-like space, but ultimately to because it was an Aries full moon, to help us advocate for ourselves. Aries is a very sort of independent sign and a very almost quite blunt sign, where it almost quite like a baby, like it just screams what it wants. And so perhaps this full moon had that energy, coupled with where Mars was as well in your chart. But it feels in some sort of sense that maybe some of your vital energy may have returned in some sort of way at this full moon. And then this Mars journey that I'm going to talk more and more about in some of the reports, because Mars is just quite a major player in the astrology going into the rest of the year, mainly because it's having a retrograde and also because it's opposite Pluto, which is in its last gasp degrees in Capricorn. And I want to talk about that in another report when it actually goes into the full opposition, but it's building up to that just now. And so it is quite powerful. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to introduce these themes that are coming up throughout the rest of the year, and then go a little bit more sort of microscopic into the areas of the chart that it might show up in future reports. But at least if you listen to this one, we're already sort of like planting the sort of ground. We're already setting the scene for more of that, like sort of more magnified work that we might do in these areas of our chart. So please, I'd love to hear how this full moon was for you, how you felt, if you felt any sort of shift, if you're feeling maybe a slight more lightness as Sagittarius, as Venus moved into Sagittarius this week. Yeah, just if you have any, when you're listening to this and you're feeling it reflect in your life, it's almost like searching for breadcrumbs. It's not always going to be on the money. You have to take what I almost describe and sort of like mold, like feel it out a little bit into where that kind of showed up in your life in the most unusual of ways. And if it does, if you felt something rang to your experience this week, I'd love to hear about it. So let me know, and I will probably be with you again in a few days because I'm very late in this report. And yeah, as ever, thank you so much for listening. And let me like, subscribe, tell a friend, you know, all that jazz. And I will see you on next week's report. Bye.